I want to begin by reiterating some of the things I said in a khutbah about a month ago here at MCC to set the table, as it were, metaphysically. I'm new with technology, so if I do something wrong, if I forget to switch a slide or something, please let me know. I'm kind of a techno-peasant. But we need to grasp our own metaphysics. So Ibn Ajiba, who was a great metaphysician in our tradition, he said that every name and title of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has three aspects that relate to His creation. And Imam al-Ghazali says something similar. He has different terminology. But the terminology of Ibn Ajiba, he calls them ta'alluq, takhalluq, and tahaqquq. You can translate these something like association, appropriation, or assimilation, and actualization. So for example, he says, in his book on the commentary of the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says one of the names or titles of Allah is Al-Malik, He's the King. How does this name associate with us? Well, it's simply a recognition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the King and we are His subjects, and that's it. Right? It's being cognizant of that fact. To be resigned to that fact. We might say, well, that's axiomatic, that's just self-evident. That's just a clear and distinct idea, as Descartes might say, but you'll be surprised how many people are not resigned to that, what we would consider to be a self-evident truth. So it's ta'alluq. And then takhalluq, appropriation or assimilation. So how do we assimilate, as it were, this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at our level? Well, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the King of everything, we also must be kings of our subjects, right? So what are our subjects? Our faculties, our limbs, right? Imam al-Ghazali uses the analogy in the Ajaib al-Qalb, the marvels of the heart, the wonders of the heart. He uses the analogy of the heart being the castle in the kingdom, and there are certain inroads to the heart that destroy the heart. For example, the eyes, the ears, the tongue, the stomach, the genitals, the hand, and the feet. These must be protected. These are our subjects. And then tahaqquq is actually to master the self, right? And to truly actualize being the king of our subjects. So this is the end or the purpose or the telos of the human being on this earth, is to mirror the divine names and attributes according to our metaphysicians. Takhallaqu bi akhlaqillah. There's a tradition, there's weakness in it, but true in its meaning. Adorn yourselves with the character of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, bil mu'mineen ra'ufur rahim. These are two divine names, but there are no definite articles. The Prophet ﷺ is, as it were, a mirror of the divine attributes at a human level. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, is Ar-Rahman. He is the infinitely merciful, the indiscriminately compassionate, the all-loving in an absolute sense. We should be people of Rahmah. We cannot be Ar-Rahman, but we are people of Rahmah, right? We mirror this divine attribute because this is an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is true in all Abrahamic religions, whether it's, talking about Ghazali in Islam, or Aquinas in Catholicism, or Maimonides in Judaism. This is called a teleological metaphysic, an end or goal-oriented metaphysic. Now our metaphysicians identified 4 causes of the creation of the human being. There are 4 causes of the creation of the human being. The efficient cause, which is the direct force of production, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is al-fa'il, as Imam al-Ghazali calls him. He is a totally free agent. He has absolute volition within his nature to do what he wants. In Arabic, this is called al-illatul fa'iliyah, the efficient cause. Then you have the material cause, which is the stuff or the material from which something is produced. Right? So Aquinas calls this prime matter, materia prima. What is the stuff from which creation is produced? Well, it's nothing. According to the Abrahamic theological positions, creation is ex nihilo. It is from nothing. So there is no material cause of creation. In the Quran, قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين وقد خلقتك من قبل ولم تك شيئا. Right? That the angel tells Zakaria alayhi salam that this is easy for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He created you before when you were nothing. You were not one thing.
How do I take this out?
Okay. So modern science or Newtonian physics stops here. They only recognize efficient and material causes. So everything is just matter in motion. It is a purely mechanistic or materialistic conception of existence. But our scholars, they continue and they recognize a third cause, which is called formal cause. And this deals with the essence of that which is produced. What is it essentially? Right? It's mahiya in Arabic. It's quiddity. It's whatness. Right? So for example, if we use the analogy of and Aristotle uses the analogy of a statue. Let's use the analogy of a statue. The efficient cause of a statue is the sculptor. The efficient cause, the force of production, or you can say sculpting. What is the material cause of the statue? Well, marble, let's say, as opposed to wood. What would be the formal cause of the statue? What is it? What is it essentially? Well, it's the figure of a human being, for example. It's the apotheosis of George Washington, which is a statue in Washington, D.C. So what is the formal cause of the human being according to our metaphysicians? It is the Khalifa, the viceroy, the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the earth. Now modern philosophers tend to be nominalistic. You see that term up there? Nominalism. In other words, they deny universals. They deny essential natures. They deny human nature. So there's no fitrah to tap into according to them. There's no innate disposition. There is no a priori knowledge. In other words, there's no knowledge without experience. And experience, according to them, is solely through the senses. This is also called empiricism. That nothing else informs the intellect other than the senses. Then you have experience, and you have memory. So there's nothing innate within us, right? So like John Locke, he called our minds a tabula rasa, a clean slate, nothing innate, right? And this is in contrast to someone like Plato, who's a realist, who said that we're actually born with all of the knowledge of the forms or the essences of things within us, and we have to use dialectic to draw those meanings out. And those meanings are true, they're real. We'll talk more about this idea of dialectic, inshallah. But the position of the nominalist is that there is no axiomatic, no self-evident, no irresistible truths to recognize. So one of the names of the Quran is At-Dhikr. It is a reminder. What does that imply? When we are reminded of truths in the Quran, we find them irresistible and we embrace them because they tap into our fitrah, our human nature. They are irresistible. Unless the fitrah has been damaged, and there's difference of opinion about this, but some of the ulama say that our human nature can actually be changed and damaged through socialization, right? So ta'muruna bil ma'ruf, they call to that which is ma'ruf, and ma'ruf literally means that which is known, right? It's a passive participle. Arafa, ya'rifu, means to recognize, recognition. You recognize something you already knew. The Quran is a dhikr, right? These are axiomatic, self-evident truths. Like Thomas Jefferson, he says, the preamble to the Declaration of Independence, he says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, namely life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So according to Thomas Jefferson, when the human intellect comes into contact with these ideas, equality of humanity, life, liberty, like freedom, the pursuit of happiness, they're irresistible. As long as a person's fitrah has not been damaged, they will immediately gravitate and embrace these ideas. Okay. However, nominalists, they reject human nature, right? And this leads to a denial then of objective morality. So everything then is subjective. Everything becomes a social construct, right? They say, then what else did we get wrong, right? So the very foundations, that which is axiomatic, have been shaken. Everything is questioned. So this has further led to a neutering or distrust of human intellect itself, a neutering of human reason. So then reason cannot be trusted. So then finally, the logical conclusion is a philosophy known as voluntarism, a philosophy which gives primacy to the will over the intellect, or as Nietzsche said, the will to power. Right? The will, from our perspective, should never exceed the jurisdiction of the intellect. The purpose of the intellect, the aql, is to keep the will, the desire, in check. Even the word aql in Arabic, the etymological meaning, aqala yaqilu, is to limit or hobble something. Remember the famous hadith of the Bedouin who came into the masjid, his camel was outside running around. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, whose camel is this? And the Bedouin said, that's my camel, atawakkalu ala Allah. I've trusted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, i'qilha wa fatawakkal ala Allah. Hobble her first. Tie her down. I'qil. Right? The word aql is related to this. The aql is supposed to keep our will in check. But if you don't trust the intellect, then the will runs crazy. Like a camel that bolts away from you. So, Stoic philosophers would also say that the purpose of the intellect is to keep the emotions in check as well. People who are highly emotive tend to be less rational. So then the principle becomes, do what you want, not what is right, because we can't know what is right. We can't trust the intellect. So the worship of the nafs. This is inevitable. Worship of the hawa, of desires, of appetites, of the will. You see, the Quran wants us to think about things. There's a type of sentence in the Quran called the jumla istifhamiyya, right? An interrogative sentence, which is a type of jumla insha'iyya, affective sentence according to the nomenclature of English grammar. This is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us a question, because we're supposed to think about the answer. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Do they not look at the camels, how they're created? فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ. In another ayah, where are you going? Look at your life. Where do you think you're going? Stop and do a self-audit. أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen the one who takes as his God his will, his desire, his passions, his caprice? Right? This is the most common type of idolatry. Worship of the self. Egolatry. Selfism. We'll talk more about this inshallah. The intellect is neutered. The will takes primacy. So, this happens when you deny a formal cause. There's no essential nature. We affirm a formal cause, the quiddity, the mahiyya. What is it? And then there's the final cause. Al-illatul gha'iyya. Why is it? Why is it? Its purpose, its telos. Right? So if we go back to the analogy of the statue, what is the final cause of that statue? It is to adorn a museum. The Smithsonian in this case, if we're talking again about the apophaesis of George Washington. So the purpose of the creation of the insan, in other words, our final cause, is given in the Quran itself. At-Dhariyat, Surah 51, Ayah 56. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this in the first person singular, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ, which is very rare in the Quran for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to speak in the first person singular, usually he speaks in the plural. And then he gives an affirmation after a negation. If that, ba'da nafyin. Very strong statement rhetorically in Arabic. I did not create the jinn and ins except to worship me. And of course we're familiar with the opinion of Ibn Abbas. This is mentioned by Imam al-Baghawi in his tafsir. Ibn Abbas, he said that إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ is understood as إِلَّا لِيَعْرِفُونَ. That in order to worship me is understood as in order to know me, have intimate knowledge of me, because he argues that true worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is predicated, or excellent worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is predicated upon deep, intimate knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you had intimate knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you would necessarily love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Well, how do we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? As we said, by associating, appropriating, and finally actualizing the divine names and attributes to truly be representatives, khulafa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the earth. To have i'tisam, a firm grip of the kitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To have ittiba', which is adherence through imitation, adherence through mimesis, imitating the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Surah number 3, ayah number 31, Ayatul Imtihan, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ. Say, if you really love Allah, then follow me. يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهِ. Then Allah will love you. So, the final cause, according to our tradition, is wilaya. To love God and to be loved by God. This is the final cause of the creation of the human being. The final cause of the creation of the human being as it relates to this existence, to this earth. Okay, so this is our metaphysic. It recognizes human nature. Human nature is unique. It's dignified. And it is goal or end oriented. Okay, so this is our metaphysic. It recognizes human nature. Human nature is unique. It's dignified. And it is goal or end oriented.